Hey dear friends, welcome back to my channel, Thien and the Book Hunt. With the end of the year approaching, we're wrapping up all of the end of the year content everywhere here on BookTube. I'm going to be talking about the most disappointing reads that I had in 2023. I really agree with what everyone has been saying in their end of the year content, that we're trying to kind of stick to the positive, to the best surprises, new to us authors, best debuts that we've discovered, like really focus on the positive because we want to uplift authors and really great books as much as possible. But obviously there will come a time where a book is really hyped, or a book that you've come across is sounding really good, the synopsis is really good, or you see the cover and it immediately speaks to you and really have kind of a little expectation that it's going to be a good one, and then when you start to read it, it's not as good as it looks or as it seems. So there's bound to be disappointing books within one's reading year, and I'm going to be talking about my disappointing reads of 2023. I decided this year to skip over the worst books of the year because I actually don't have any one-star reads this year, and the two-star reads that I have are more disappointing reads than really badly written books, or books with really genuinely bad content in them. So I just decided to stick to the disappointing reads of 2023, and I'm going to discuss them in this video. I know that it's very fun to watch such videos, so enjoy it. And it's not very fun to make because I really genuinely dislike talking badly about books, but I'm going to give you my honest opinion about each and every one of these books. So let's just go ahead and jump into this pool of sadness, for me at least, because I really had high hopes for a lot of these books. The first book I'm going to mention is one that I read at the start of the year. And that book, I don't really consider a romance. It looked like a romance, it sounded like a romance, but in my opinion, it definitely isn't a romance. The book is called King of Flesh and Bone by Zander. When I saw the cover, I was like, ooh, this looks good. Kind of dark fantasy read, maybe paranormal. I wasn't sure what it was, but then I started reading it. And it was like 98% dark and 2% romance, and even those 2% is generous because it's not really romance, it's more like the hero has an obsession with the heroine. There is a lot of non-consent within this book, there is a lot of darkness within this book, and I genuinely just was reading it to finish it. Because I don't like DNFing books, especially because this one was not very long, so I was like, I can push through it, but I was kind of sorry that I pushed through it because it was really dark. It was just not for me. I genuinely like dark romances, but this one was just dark for the sake of darkness, if you get what I mean. I mean, for me, darkness, if there is some kind of a point to it within the plot, maybe to work through some trauma or work through some really horrific event, or that event is something that kind of strikes me as realistic, or I don't know, just something needs to make sense for me. And within this book, it just seemed like it was dark for the sake of it being striking, you know, kind of like it wanted to impact the reader so that they're kind of, so that it grabs your attention, let me put it like this. So it just didn't work for me. I didn't like this book. I gave it 2 stars, and based on the fact that I read the synopsis for it and was really intrigued by the cover, I was majorly disappointed when I finished it. So this one is a no-go for me. The next one is a really hyped book. I thought that I just saw so many people raving about this book. I thought it was genuinely going to be a very romantic book. The book is called A Million Kisses in Your Lifetime by Monica Murphy, and for me, this was the blandest and most boring book that I've read maybe in the whole of the year. I had such a tough time finishing this book. I was struggling with the audiobook, and only the end of the book made me give it 1 star more than a 1-star read. So I gave it 2 stars. The ending was cute. It had some kind of a merit to it, so I kind of couldn't give it a 1 star, but this was really one of the worst books that I read this year, at least to my taste, let me put it like that. The hero was very two-dimensional to me. The heroine was very unlikable, very pretentious, and she was kind of almost like a prude. I don't like that word, but nothing jumps up as a synonym to that word other than that word. So she really kind of seemed stuck up to me, and I just didn't buy into the romance, so it didn't work for me. This book was not it for me. So yeah, 2 stars. The next one pains me to say because I've been seeing many favorite booktubers of mine, specifically the one that I can think of that really loved it is Crystal from Crystal's Bookish Life. The book is called Transcendence by Shay. It has this kind of an interesting setting of having time travel within the plot, where the heroine lives in kind of modern times, I think in like the 70s or 80s, I don't remember. And then through a magical aspect within the book, she gets transported into time, into kind of like the Stone Age, where you have this primal man who sees her. He has been living on his own, and when he sees her, he immediately is like, this is my mate, I'm going to have her have my offspring immediately. So there is a very big language barrier between the hero and heroine, and that was one of the points within the book that really didn't work for me. I typically love a language barrier within a book, but within this book, I don't want to spoil it too much, but I'm going to spoil it here because I can't explain my point without spoiling it. Basically, until the end of the book, they don't really find a common language. They do have some basic communication skills with each other, but it looks like their whole relationship and their whole life, they just have this barrier between them. And for me, that kind of seems either unrealistic or not very practical. I don't know how to explain myself very well on this point, but really it didn't seem very productive for the love story itself. And then another thing is that it's very insta-love for the hero, and the heroine has a valid kind of reluctance that she actually wants to obviously go back to her modern time, but then she starts to get used to being in the situation that she's in, and those little moments that they have, I do appreciate them. That's why I gave this book 3 stars. It wasn't a total bust for me, but honestly, because I've been hearing so many amazing things about this book, I really expected it to be a 5-star read, especially because it has such an interesting premise with the time travel. But I've been finding out that time traveling really hasn't been working very well for me. It's not the best trope for me specifically. There's very few books that really have made this trope work to my taste. So yeah, this one was also unfortunately a disappointment. A book that I hardly remember, honestly, the plot, it's just gone from my head, is Truth by Trillina Pucci. Now, I've been seeing Trillina Pucci blowing up everywhere, specifically last year during the holiday period. She had a holiday release and everyone was talking about Trillina Pucci, and I was like, I don't have that holiday themed book available to me on audio, but I did have this one available to me, so I started to read it, and is just not memorable at all. And I just found myself, I don't even remember, but I found myself thinking, is this it? Like, is this it? I was expecting so much more based on all of the reviews of her other books that I've been seeing. I just didn't enjoy that book at all. And then the other thing is that throughout the year, we found out that there is some controversy surrounding this specific author. I kind of try to steer clear away from the drama, but I did find out that this author has done some not so nice things within the book sphere. So I was like, well, the book that I read by this author didn't really appeal to me, so I don't think I'm going to be picking up other books by this author anyway. So yeah, kind of a bust for me. Another fantasy book that didn't really work well for me is by Alexis Aster. The book is called Lightlark. This was supposed to be some kind of like a book talk favorite book that was really hyped as well. And while I did appreciate little things that were thrown into the plot, it just wasn't very well flushed out, and it kind of read as a very, very undeveloped plot. I was missing some things, and the connections between the characters were missing for me. Additionally, it was very predictable in my opinion, and for a fantasy book to find that it's predictable, it's kind of not a very good thing. So I definitely will not be continuing on with the series. It was a disappointment because I did see it blow up everywhere. I was seeing this cover everywhere at some point, and I really hoped that I would love it, but unfortunately I didn't. One of the biggest books on BookTube this year is one of my biggest disappointments. Unfortunately, I think almost everyone loves this book. Actually, the full series by this author. The book is Binding 13 by Chloe Walsh. I honestly don't find any reason for these books to be 800 pages, each and every one of them. There's currently 4 books, and I believe there's going to be another release very soon, and each of them is 800 pages, and that was just too much. I mean, I've read long books before. I can see where some of them have merit to them to be so long, but within this one there was just so much mundane things, so many mundane things that were described on page that were absolutely unnecessary. Well, while I was reading the audiobook, I was almost brought to a slump because of this book. I do see how a lot of things that were within this book could be appreciated. I mean, the depiction of abuse, of bullying, of really having a difficult home life, as well as the other character having some medical issues. I appreciate those sides of the plot, and I appreciate their connection as characters, but all of the little things that brought me out of the plot really bothered me so much that I couldn't enjoy the story. And I was like, if the second book is not as long, so if it's edited more, I would give it a chance. But then seeing that every single one of these books is 800 pages, there's no way, even if you pay me, that I'm going to pick up any of these books. So unfortunately, they're a bust for me. The book by the next author was a surprise to me that it was a disappointment, because I've read other books by Contreras in the past and I've enjoyed them. And this one I really had high hopes for because it seemed like an interesting premise. But I had major issues with the hero. The book is called Until I Get You. It's her latest release that released this year. And I just had issues with the hero. He was not communicating with the heroine. He was upset at her for making decisions for him. Basically, she broke it off with him. He was very much in love with her, and she disappeared. And at some point he found her and he was like, you're coming with me and we're not having any discussions. You're gonna do what I'm saying. And just every single time that she tries to do something, he is being a jealous, possessive asshole. And while I can understand, like within mafia romances and within like romantic suspense situations, that the possessive hero or the jealous hero is something that is appealing, but when the person is just not letting the heroine have any say at all for absolutely anything, and kind of puts words in her mouth, it kind of becomes an issue for me, because that character becomes extremely unlikable and there is just no saving or redeeming graces for him. So this book was just not it for me. I think I gave it 2 stars, and unfortunately I really didn't like it. The next book I talked about so much in the past couple of weeks because it was included in a couple of the videos that I had this month is Things We Hide from the Light by Lucy Score. This was a major disappointment to me because I love the first book. I've mentioned it a couple of times already. I gave the first book 5 stars, so I had high hopes for this one, but it just did not work for me. It was long. It was like the characters were not... They didn't have any chemistry, in my opinion. The romantic suspense situation was really not flushed out very well. It was not appealing within the story, and just all the little details that could have been avoided for it to be shorter. just grated on my nerves. So I gave this book 2 stars. I really didn't enjoy it, and unfortunately, because it just left such a bad taste in my mouth, I don't think that I'm going to be able to pick up the 3rd book, even though I've heard a lot of good things about it. I'm going to have to think about whether I'm going to be picking up that book for a long time before I decide on it. So yeah, this one was definitely not it for me. Another book that really disappointed me is a holiday themed book called The Perfect Place. This book I really had high hopes for already last year. I put it on my TBR, but I didn't make it to read it around the holiday period, so I put it off for this year. So I was already from last year looking forward to picking it up. The premise sounded really interesting. The cover is gorgeous. I had it on audio, so I was like I would be able to really enjoy it. In terms of the production, and then it was just a bust for me. First of all, I don't think that this can be considered a romance. First of all, the second thing is really there is a side character that has such a major presence within the book that really made it kind of awful. And then the connection between the 2 characters is just zero. There is zero connection between the 2 of them. They're more enemies than they are lovers. I can get behind an enemies to lovers plot any day, but there needs to be some kind of connection, or at least some kind of a chemistry between them to kind of help overbridge the enemies part to help it transition into lovers. But within this book, no. Just no. So unfortunately, it was a bust for me as well. Lastly, I'm just going to shortly mention 3 books that I actually did not finish. Those were books I was really looking forward to, and I actually thought that there were going to be at least 4 or 5 star reads for me, but I could not bring myself to finish them. The first one being Chef's Kiss by TJ Alexander. I've been on a real foodie kick. I really love foodie romances where we've got a chef or a restaurant owner or a farmer who is producing some kind of food. I love such books. And then this book centers on a chef. But the main character is the most unlikable, insufferable type of a character that I've ever read, almost, I think. I could not bring myself to like them, and I was kind of rooting for the respective love interest to kind of not have any interest in the protagonist within the book, and that is not a good thing. That is just not a good thing. So I think I even made it up to 40 or 50% within the book, and I just could not make myself finish it. So unfortunately, this is really a disappointment to me, and especially because I think it does have a high rating on Goodreads. I just don't get it. I really, really don't get it. The second book is part of the of my most anticipated releases of 2024. The book is called Full Exposure by Thien Kim Lam. This book really sounded good on paper. It was supposed to be 2 characters who meet at Mardi Gras and they spend this amazing time together. He's a photographer, or she's a photographer, I don't remember. One of the characters is a photographer and the second one is a resident of the city, and they take them kind of on a trip through Mardi Gras and through the whole experience, and they fall in love in the process. But the book was really bland and really not what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was really going to be so much fun, but it was kind of boring to me. I think again I got to the 40 or 50% mark and I just didn't see any point in continuing because nothing exciting was happening within the plot. And unfortunately, even though the cover is gorgeous and the premise sounded really good, it just did not work for me. The last book I'm going to mention is another paranormal fantasy book. The book is called The Longing of Lone Wolves. This one sounded really good on paper as well. I think I saw someone talking about it last year, at the end of last year. I'm not sure who it was, but one of my favorite booktubers was recommending this book, and it really sounded good on paper again. But then I was reading through the start of the book and it really sounded so amateuristic. But it really just didn't work for me. I was reading it and I was like, oh no, this is not it for me. And well, the cover is gorgeous again. And again, when I was listening to someone describe it, it sounded good. While I was reading it, I was not having any fun at all. So I unfortunately DNF'd it. That's it, my friends. Those were my most disappointing reads of this year. I fortunately had only a couple because I finished about 240 books this year, and to have only a handful being disappointments is quite an accomplishment. So I'm really happy about that. I am sorry that I included these very hyped books for some of them within this list, but those are just genuinely books that did not work for me. I'm sorry if you love them. That is absolutely fine if you love them. I just didn't love them myself. And then let me know which ones were disappointing to you. Maybe I've read them, maybe I can leave my opinion on them as well. Maybe they disappointed me as well at another time, and we can commiserate in our disappointment together. And yeah, I hope to see you in the next one. The next one is going to be the last video within this year, so I look forward to sharing that with you, and have a wonderful, marvelous day. Happy reading. Take care, and bye-bye.